Public meeting of the City of Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board is now called to order at 4:03 p.m. Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. The board members are present here at City Hall along with members of the public. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technology Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Board's website, and we are recording it for future reference. There is a delay with online communications, and we should all be patient. As always, we thank those members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure your microphone is muted. We ask the public to email ethics@talgov.com if they wish to speak online or on agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their names will be allowed to speak as scheduled. While the meeting is in progress, please do not speak during the board's discussion. We have set aside 2 different places on the agenda for the public to speak. For those who wish to make a public comment, please complete a speaker request form and forward it to the administrative specialist, Ms. Tasker Leverson Green. Be sure to state what you wish to speak about on the form. Public speakers will be given up to 3 minutes in accordance with the board's bylaws. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we will have our roll call.
Kirsten Costa,
Here.
Patrick Kelly, Carlos Ray,
Here.
Rita Calhoun, here. Adam Commissar,
Here.
Ryan Smith.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Now we will look at the minutes for our June 18th, 2024 meeting. Are there any questions or concerns about the minutes?
On page 3 of 4, under item 12, I think it's missing the word de minimis value.
Okay. So we'll make that a,
And other than that,
she got.
Anything else? I would like to entertain a motion as amended.
Second.
Mr. Ray makes the motion to accept the minutes as amended, and Mr. Commissar seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Next, do we have any public comment on agenda items? Next, we have our ethics officer report. Mr. Floyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a snapshot of the staff's activities between June 11, 2024 and August 12, 2024. We conducted ethics training for new firefighters and several sessions for new employees. We facilitated group sessions with online instructions for employees who do not have the capabilities to run the online course on a computer or mobile phone. We made a presentation at new member orientation. We implemented this year's annual online ethics course. We ran a promotion for the campaign contribution refund program. In response to Senate Bill 7014, we met several times with officers from other ethics offices throughout the state. We met with the city staff about revisions to the ethics code, the development of an online course about the sunshine law, the training requirements, and public records requests. We responded to ethics complaints, maintained administrative duties, and held staff meetings with the board chair. You have there the list of items from June through the end of July for items that we expended. And legal services are actually the same person. It was a different mood when we noted those. For the budget, we started the fiscal year with $443,004. As of the end of July, we are at $128,818. We encumbered $9,500, which is what we use to promote campaign contribution refund program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Next month, we'll provide a report detailing the promotion and its outcome. We estimate a balance at the end of the year of approximately $71,872. Any questions about the budget concerns?
I don't have any questions, but I noticed that you're using Adobe for the Photoshop and the stock. There may be a way to get the suite for about this price that will give you access to Adobe Creative, and you can have a wider option of photos and graphics.
Got you, duly noted. You talk about Creative Cloud and, okay, and getting one fee instead of doing them
Separate.
separately. We'll make that correction next year.
Okay.
Thank you. You noted that task for me. I'm getting old and forgetful. Thank you. 6C, issue tracking. I recommend in the future that I only report formal or informal complaints concerning the city of Tallahassee. Right now, I give you just about everything that comes in, and a lot of it has nothing to do with the board, as you see on that list. It'll reduce the numbers, but it would be more accurate. And if you're interested in other calls, I can report them as referrals. Because, you know, it's just like yesterday and today, I get calls from people, they know that they're not in our jurisdiction, but they're just looking for help, and I answer the phone. So, and I do help them. Do you have any questions about the calls listed? If not, Madam Chair, we recommend closing the listed complaints.
Anyone?
So moved.
Okay. Kelly moves and Mr. Rice seconds to close the following complaints. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm fine. I don't know if we need to make a motion to accept that recommendation. Do you only report to us?
As long as you're,
Does anyone want to see them all broken down or just the ones that pertain to us?
I don't think we need to see them, but maybe just for your own purposes, keep some sort of track of all the referrals you do. Because the day might come where somebody might say, what are we doing with this phone line? And we don't realize that you do actually do a lot of good, but it's referring people to their other places.
right, okay, we can do that.
How difficult is it for you to provide us with that?
That,
Yeah.
I just open it every time I get a call. So it's just a matter of what you want to see in this meeting. What you want to report as complaints.
I mean, I personally would feel that these aren't necessarily complaints because they don't fall within our jurisdiction. So, I mean, if you open it, say anyway, is maybe just keep a running list and just kind of an FYI for us. And so that we can still take a peek, because at some point we still may want to address maybe the wording on the thing, you know, or something like that. And this may give us some helpful verbiage as to, okay, we seem to always get complaints about XYZ. And if we can then help to come up with a phone tree dialogue or something like that, that may be a little bit more helpful or something like that. So I do think the information is good, like Mr. Commissar was saying, but I wouldn't necessarily say we recommend closing unless it truly comes to us.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I can do that.
If that, I don't know if I understand the chairman, I think I do, but if that, just presenting that little list to us every time without any action required is not difficult, I'd like to see them.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're pretty skilled at all these, technologies.
That's a simple thing, so we can do that for you.
Next, we will have our general update.
Yeah, general updates. First of all, Ms. Livingston Green sent you evaluation forms. It's time for my annual evaluation. You'll get it to us by the end of the month. That will be soon enough. We're not asking for it today. And I would suggest that you use the information from the annual report and from the strategic plan, because it tells you what we did or didn't accomplish this year. Campaign contribution refund program. As stated, we initiated a campaign contribution refund program for July and August. We contracted with Human Broadcasting and WFSU to promote the program on the 4 top radio stations and through digital media. The promotion will end this week. We'll provide a detailed report in September. So we'll come back into September and tell you what kind of hits we got on the website, how many people responded, et cetera. So we'll have that next month. On a lighter note, If no, there are no objections, yes, Ms. Leverson Green, Attorney Reed and I would like to purchase shirts with our logo in the name of our board. We're tired of being jealous. The city has them all the time. So we want our own with our own beautiful logo. We'll use them during training. We may bring them to these meetings, you know, during formal and informal settings. And they shouldn't be that expensive.
Does anyone have any objections for that?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. The COGO conference I've attended every year. This is an event, it's valuable because it provides significant training for me and networking. This year's conference will be in Los Angeles. Unless you have objections, I am planning on attending. The cost is usually, has been, I went to Montreal, I went to Kansas. I think one was around 1,800, the other one's around 2,500, so general cost. I think it's worth it. Don't mind. We're still waiting to hear from FSU on filling the seat they hold on the board. Last we talked, they would select for new hires in their ethics and compliance office. I know they've made some progress. I will check with them in September. It's been a long time, but hopefully they'll do that. We will have one at-large vacancy. Unfortunately, Ms. Carlos Ray's second term will end at the end of December, and we'll need to replace him. And I'm stating that now because we'll soon start advertising for it, so we can start that process and try to have somebody in the seat in January. Okay. And we're gonna have a big party in December to celebrate his accomplishments, not his leaving.
Don't worry, I'll be with you.
That was intended. And next month, we're going to also bring an updated ethics guide. I tasked her with doing that, and I didn't look at it until today, but she did a really, really good job, and it's almost finished. Just with what she did. I asked her to look at it from the user standpoint and make it shorter, more concise and to the point, and she's done a really, really good job. So you'll get that next month, and that's probably all that I have other than what you will sign for next month's agenda. So Madam Chair, those are the general updates.
Are there any questions on them? Okay, so the next agenda item is revisions to the administrative procedure. Because of Senate Bill 7014, the board can no longer self-initiate a sworn complaint. So today, Mr. Reed is going to review these revisions, and the staff is asking us to approve changes to the board's administrative procedures in response to this legislation.
Yes, so under tab 8 is what you see as APA 2024-01. This is an amendment to our administrative procedures, specifically Rule 1.03. As the chair correctly noted, in June, the governor signed Senate Bill 7014, which limited a lot of how we could move forward. So self-initiation was completely removed from all local ethics boards. So subsection A is removed in its entirety. The new paragraph A is going to be filing of complaints with the ethics board. The statute now also mandates that all complaints be sworn and in writing. So we add language to now what is subsection B, say sworn complaints. And then we remove the reference to the self-initiated complaints. There's also language in the statute that requires that all complaints be based upon personal knowledge or information other than hearsay. And we had discussed this, I think, briefly at the June meeting. This was an issue of debate during the legislative session on, is that the legal definition of hearsay or is it something else? And you should also have under tab 8, case from the 4th District Court of Appeals, Florida Elections Commission, v. Valeri. In chapter 106, the election code, the language almost is identical to the language that's now in chapter 112. And the sponsor of the bill in the House referenced this case and said that hearsay will not be the legal definition, but rather the dictionary definition. And the case goes and actually provides the dictionary definition. So we took that exact language from the case and put it right into our administrative procedures. So it's hearsay means idle or unverified information, including but not limited to gossip or rumor. It does not mean an out-of-court statement as defined by the state evidence code. So I think that will hopefully alleviate some of our issues. And I know that we are on a group email and we meet regularly with other ethics boards and commissions around the state of Florida, and they're all, I think, dealing with the same issue. So I think we'll be seeing a lot of those as we go forward. One issue that we discussed, and that's on page 4, now 6A, is what if somebody files an unsworn complaint? We receive it. It's clearly within our jurisdiction. We go back and ask them to cure the deficiency by offering as a sworn complaint. What happens to that initial document? Does it get swallowed into the what is now a sworn complaint, or is it a standalone document? We put here I think it would be part of the final complaint. And we just want to clarify that because there are rules of confidentiality under the statute that are important to protect the reputations of people that are accused. And we wanted to ensure, because I do think that some of the changes in the statute will have unintended consequences where issues that would have been confidential before, these wild allegations, are now going to be public. But we wanted to at least try to extend some of the confidentiality to protect people that might be accused. And then the other issue is the statute also prohibits self-initiation of complaints and investigations. But sometimes, as we just heard with the grid that we went through earlier, sometimes we'll get calls that won't necessarily be within our jurisdiction, or maybe the complaint will be legally insufficient. We want to refer it out. We don't want to call that an investigation, so we call it an initial inquiry or assessment, so we can make a quick snap judgment on what's involved in this allegation. Do we just send it back and say, sorry, I can't do anything? Or do we send it to another state agency or federal agency? So that language is in there. So we make it clear that what we would be doing would not be an investigation, just an assessment, so we can get it off our plate. And that is all I have, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions on the changes to this amendment?
I'm just curious, statistically, as long as you've been here, how big of an impact is this going to have on?
I've been here longer. So I don't think it'll be that much of an impact. Like I think we talked, I think like Miami-Dade is going to be decimated. Some of the other jurisdictions that, really, and they're countywide, and they have and they cover not only the county, but all the cities within Miami-Dade County. And a lot of the big indictments that have been in the news originated with their commission. And they all started through self-initiated complaints. So there's a former state senator who's currently standing trial for fraud and bribery, I believe. And he'd probably still be on the city commission if this law had been in place a year prior. So, but as far as us, we occasionally would get self-initiated. A lot of times we would find that there was nothing there, we dismiss it. So now I think once we get something, I think Mr. Floyd is going to tell them it is legally insufficient and give them the opportunity to sign a sworn complaint form.
When you combine this change with the current whistleblower problem we have, that seems to be likely to increase somebody's reluctance to come forward. So where are we on that? Are we going to cover that later? Where are we on the whistleblower issues? It's still moving forward with a charter?
Yes, it's the whistleblower. Well, we didn't get whistleblower. We got the alternative with the inspector general having more independence. And that's going to the voters in November. So at this point, we don't have anything to do with it other than let's see what happens. And I would say from my perspective, from where I sit, right now, things are business as usual. That's all I can really say at this point. But right now, things are business as usual.
Any other questions or comments about this amendment?
Can you move to adopt this in this meeting or to wait till next meeting?
This can be adopted today.
No edits. Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt the recommended changes to administrative policy procedures.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Ray makes a motion and Mr. Kelly seconds it. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have revisions to the Ethics Code. Mr. Reed will be presenting some proposed revisions to the Ethics Code, starting with 9A, which will be gifts, 9B, which will be definition of covered individuals, and then 9C, which is employees doing business with the city. These are in response to concerns we previously discussed as a board. And if the proposed revisions are accepted by the board, we will recommend these changes to the City Commission for their adoption.
So, first and before you is, I think, find is tab 9A, and that is what I've called 24-ORD 02, and there's an A, B, and C options. Today, I guess there's really 5 options. You could adopt one of these in its entirety. You could go cafeteria style and pick and choose from each of them and decide what you think would be best, or you could say, we don't want to move forward with any of them. So the first is 24 ORD 2A. This is essentially the language we discussed at the meeting in June that gave this board the discretion to decide what would be de minimis. There are no dollar amounts attached. It provides other factors. And I saw that we have this advisory opinion attached. And that is kind of what spurred this. We had a member of the city commission who wanted to appear on the radio in a scavenger hunt and was not permitted to do so. And we all felt that maybe that isn't what the ethics code was intended to prohibit. So we wanted to see, is there a way we could tinker with the gift definition, provide a de minimis exception so that type of activity could be permitted. So essentially, it would be the board's discretion. You would look at factors such as the nature of the goods, service, or thing of value given or received, the value of the benefit to the recipient, the frequency of the benefit to the recipient, the position of the recipient, and the context in which the goods, service, or thing of value is given or received. Obviously, the pro for this is that it gives the board pretty broad discretion to determine what would be permissible, what would not be permissible. The big con, I think, is that it's subjective and it doesn't provide a whole lot of certainty to the public. What's minimus, what's not. Of course, I think future advisory opinions, we would essentially build our own case law to set our own precedent. I think it could provide guidance to members. And then, of course, if somebody wanted to request an advisory opinion on a particular gift, we could try to address the definition or the determination of a de minimis gift in that case. Because they will now, then we define de minimis gift, then we create an exception in the gift ban for a de minimis gift, so they would be permitted to take that. Now that they're taking a gift, we felt we needed to create some type of reporting process so we know who's getting these gifts, even though they could be of very little value. So in this particular ordinance, 2A, we create a new subsection C of section 2-15, which provides for a report of the gift within 20 days of the acceptance of the gift. It would be done on a form that we would prepare and adopt as a board. And that form would, at a minimum, require the identification of the goods, service, or thing of value, the donor of the gift, estimated value, and the date the gift was received. We also put language in here just to make it crystal clear that if somebody is a reporting individual that's required to report under state law, this report doesn't relieve them of that obligation. So we wanted to make that crystal clear. So this is 2A. That is the subjective discretion determination of de minimis. 2B.
Real quick, does anyone want to talk about them individually first, or do you want to hear all the options and then go back and discuss them? I just didn't want you to get ahead of.
Appreciate that.
All the options are
Hear them
fine.
all first? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. 2B. Oh, and then also at the very beginning, I think we added some sections in recent years, and the opening sentence of 2-4 didn't change the the number of sections that are encompassed in the ethics code, so we just make that quick change. Here, we say de minimis is at a monetary value. It shall not exceed $20, and the total annual limit of $50 from a single source. And it is unlikely to influence or appear to influence a covered individual's decision-making. So there is some subjective component to it, but we did put some dollar amounts. And I think that was one of the options we wanted to look at and just kind of see what it looked like on the page. Again, we then go to section 2-15, which is on pages 4 and 5. We provide an exception for a gift of de minimis value. We also then keep the same reporting process that was in 2A. So they would still be required to report to us that they were taking the gift and all that additional information.
So this page, the top of the page is page 19. What? 29.
What you're, I think the usually trying to address is code officials participating or engaging in events or being in commercials. We adding value to that? Is that considered de minimis? In the sense that they say they appear in a commercial for a scavenger hunt or a commercial of some sort. Are we assessing value to that participation in those events, or how will that fall into this process? Because I think that's the main issue we're trying to address is not a water bottle. It's more of a presenting or saying, come down to this restaurant, we want to support local businesses, or participate in events of that nature. How we,
I would say that B and C would not help that advisory opinion whatsoever, because there's no way getting on the radio is worth under $20 or even under $100 under C. But I know the board did want to see what this would look like for dollar figures, so we put that there. But really, as far as that particular issue that kind of got this whole discussion started, 2A is really the only one that would be the option. And then, of course, we would, want to look at, all those other factors to determine whether we want to declare it de minimis or not.
Is there a situation where you pick from one of these three, but then have something else that addresses our initial concern, which is like public presentations consistent with your current position are not gifts? It's basically to kind of exempt where it's like, if you go on the ad and say, vote for me 12 times, it might be a gift from whoever paid for that time. But if you're doing the scavenger hunt for the community center, it's clearly not. So just something where we basically say, just because you're being on TV during the course of your service to the city doesn't mean that you're receiving a gift television time. And that would take it out of the whole gift scenario.
I mean, that's an important distinction. If it's campaign related, it would be excluded from the state definition of gift. And I know in this particular case, that was one of the first questions I asked. He had just been reelected at the time he requested this, and the account had been closed. So I was saying, has he already reopened? It'd been like 2 months. I said, I know it's early, but has he reopened? And he had not, so we weren't able to get into that exception. But as far as I think, and that's something that we didn't prepare today, I don't know if we had discussed it, but we could very well, if we just want to deal with that one particular issue, we could drop an exception that deals with airtime to serve the public. Because I think Mr. Floyd mentioned, what if they go to WFSU and they, get on the radio and try to raise money for the radio station, the PBS station, but they themselves were also receiving something of value by just being on the radio and their name being repeated over and over. So that is an option that's not before you today, but it's one that we could consider.
Us.
yeah, I think that'll be I think that's going to address the concerns we've had as far as the board and things that come before us. I don't think we're too much concerned about the value. It's more of the participation in events and having your name associated with certain events. Let's say, a local shelter, you want to be a speaker there and they put your name on a flyer, things of that nature. Is that a gift if they're putting your name out there? And maybe we can make a distinction, outside campaign time. If you're not for every election, we can make exceptions. But I think it's one of you're a public officer, one of the roles is not simply voting on the commission, but also bringing light to issues that you're concerned about. How can we avoid them falling into potential, a complaint being filed against them because they've engaged in bringing light to an issue they were interested in?
Just spitballing. I'm wondering if we might want to come up with some language that says if the primary beneficiary of whatever it may be is not the covered individual. So for instance, somebody is on PBS, clearly the primary beneficiary is going to be PBS. The person's just going to happen to realize some benefit just by being on the radio, but that's not primary beneficiary of their appearance. So that might be a way to get there without creating a loophole so big that they could do more than what we really have wanted to do.
Yeah, we can also, if we want to make distinctions of, vendors of the city or things of that, or registered lobbyists, you're not going to sort of appear on advertising for vendors that are with the city itself. We can make the exempt those individuals as well.
And that was an issue here. This person was a vendor.
Yeah.
And that was the problem. They had,
So we can narrow that hole there that we're concerned
there's a
about.
general public purpose of it's not for their commercial benefit.
Yeah.
We could play with that language and I could bring it back. So,
Yeah, because, I'm a little concerned about the subjective approach to de minimis value that they filed the report, and then depending on the board and how they feel that they, we want something that gives proper guidance to our elected officials of how they can engage the public and not be concerned about potential blowback without them knowing it. So that was my recommendation.
well, I suspect there's probably no appetite for it. C is also a monetary value ordinance. It really just brings us in line with the state. So it would not provide a more stringent limit under our local code as opposed to the state code. So that may probably the least desirable of the three. I wanted to at least put that out there. So at least it's an option, but two, also you could see what the law is requiring. Any gift up to $25, you don't have to report or let anybody know. Between 25 and 100, you have to file a report with the Florida Commission on Ethics, and that's only if you're a reporting individual. I put some language in here where it said if you happen to be, and I don't even know if there'd be a Venn diagram that would cover these people, but if you were not a reporting individual, but you were a covered individual, well, we approach that. So I did distinguish for that small subgroup that may or may not exist. But based on what I'm hearing today, it doesn't sound like the dollar figures are the direction we wish to go in. But I just want to let you know that's what 2C is.
I think there should be, sorry, I think there should be some guidance though, some parameters around de minimis for the same concerns that were previously mentioned related to consistency and just making sure that there's some expectation about what de minimis will look like. So I don't think it's helpful to necessarily go the path of not having any direction in that. But I think that it should be paired with the carve out for the, characteristics we discussed, related to public good.
John and Dwight, have you contacted other ethic boards around the state on this issue to see what they have in place and get an idea of what they're doing?
I didn't speak to them, but I looked at their codes and a couple of them just had 2C, which I was a little surprised by. I think ours was probably one of the stricter ones that we have. But I didn't find anything that would address like being on the radio. And I think that would probably have to be a specific carve out of some sort. And as far as calling it de minimis, I don't know if we would want to call that de minimis because I think it's a pretty big benefit. So, but we could still carve it out, just don't call it de minimis.
Like public good publicity.
Well, and is there a leaning between any of these three? Because I still feel like we brought up the de minimis, the issue, but idea and conversation, because it was something that we kind of targeted on the public air, commercial kind of thing. But I still think it's something that was important enough that we should at least lay some parameters. So my thoughts are that we lean towards one of these three, but then add in a carve out that is not truly de minimis, but also talking about, like you said, a separate carve out for public air, public benefit, whatever you want to kind of, your wording before was really great. So, but is there a leaning? Because this probably something like it will come up again. So I do feel like it's important that maybe we don't have to 100% pick it today, but if we're not ready to do that, but at least kind of, is there a direction that people are leaning with either none, the minimal, or the same as the thing?
So A, I think, is asking for problems, to leave it blank, to say you've got to do something, but then you get to independently interpret whether you need to do it or not. And a bunch of people in the future will get to decide whether you did it right. That's a little, it's almost like by putting in writing that it's de minimis and you decide, then you're going to have people being like, oh, that was de minimis here. And that was, it's, if we're going to do something, we should have some numbers on it.
Madam Chair, question, is part of this the scope? It sounds like the scope that you want to address is narrow. And this may be broader than the scope that you want to address, because you're really just trying to define things that are consistent with the performance of their duties in terms of doing public good. And if I remember correctly, part of the problem here is that state statute defines these type of public appearances as a gift. And our language says you cannot receive a gift of any value. Whereas with the state, it says you can receive, what is it?
100 if you're a reporting individual.
Up to 100. So the state gives them more latitude than we do. And it sounds like the intention here is to give them that latitude because ours is too stringent. Does that make?
So I think the middle ground would be 2B, because 2C, the existing expectation is essentially an expenditure ban. So, and then 2C, there's no reporting at all until you get to 25 to no more, the 25 to 100 range for a reporting individual or procurement employee. So there's and C will streamline the reporting for some individuals, but there is a question as to whether everyone will be covered. So B is broad enough to cover everyone. I think it will allow reporting with a value up to $20. And because it's on a form that the ethics board is creating, we can tailor it to our needs, as opposed to using the state report pretty much exclusively, unless there's someone that falls outside of that. So I like to be out of the three, with the carve out.
Yes.
that we talked about.
Makes sense to me.
Anybody else leaning one way or another and want to discuss your thoughts on it in case we want to lean one way or another?
Probably going towards B.
Okay, so my thought is, do you want us to vote on the A part right now and then add the carve out later? Is that would be the direction of the staff?
Let me bring it back.
Bring it back
Yeah, let me
completely?
bring it
Okay,
back.
with a leaning towards B?
Yeah, and just don't want to be real clear. You don't have to pick an A, B, or C. You're not gonna hurt my feelings if you say no, give up. If you want to just do say, we're not gonna touch the dollar amounts, we're gonna just keep it how it is, but we're gonna just create this narrow carve out for the communication issue. That is an option. So it kind of sounded like people say, oh, we gotta pick one. You could pick none of the above. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Well, then maybe let's come back with that, is come back with the carve out alone and come back with the carve out with the de minimis together.
Okay.
And I think if I'm hearing correctly, the will would be around the B. So kind of lean towards B with the carve out and see what that language ultimately looks like. Because, I say pride ourselves on having this gift ban kind of which I do think is important, especially with history in the recent years. So I do think that's important that we stand by some of that, but it may be that we give a little leeway depending on this other, because I do think ultimately the will of the board from my hearing in the past is that Tallahassee still has that small town community feel, and part of being able to be, if an elected official can help a small nonprofit organization gain more money, it doesn't feel to the benefit of the elected official. It feels to the benefit of the small organization that can't do it without their assistance, or without that name, or without that face. So I don't think any of us want to stop those kind of potential benefits for those organizations, as long as it's open to all and not being solicited.
I'll come back. So,
Well, I don't know if you can answer this or John can, but what ultimately, this has to go to the council for approval.
City Commission.
It's been the history of us proposing changes to our administrative rules and procedures and them approving and not approving.
well, the administrative rules don't go to
Okay, so the
Only-
previous,
only the-
the previous one,
This is the
the,
order.
yeah, just
the previous administrative procedure won't go to the council?
the one we just did the other day is done. That's adopted.
Yeah.
Okay.
This would have to go, and it would be up to their discretion on whether they wish to adopt it or not. And it's been a mixed bag.
The parts that they don't like is reporting.
I'm sure they'd appreciate our saying being on TV is not a gift ever. We're doing one they like and one they might
Yeah,
not.
exactly, yeah.
There's some similar feelings there, but
So they don't get to amend it before they approve it?
No, they could do whatever they want.
yeah, yes, they have the last words.
Oh, yeah. Just a recommendation.
Mhm.
All right, so that's 9A gifts. Next, we'll move on to after the next pink to 9B, covered individuals.
Yes, so, hold on, let me get there.
Time to peek.
Oh, there. Okay. So again, the opening sentence, we changed the numbers. And this addresses two areas. It's the definition of covered individual, and then it grabs the inspector general and us for that definition. So a couple of things. One, this language was originally taken from state statute, I think word for word. This provision, this paragraph 2, that talks about the Form 1 filers, including employees with purchasing authority exceeding 35,000. I assume anybody with purchasing authority over 35,000 is going to file a Form 1. But is there somebody who files a Form 1 that doesn't have that purchasing authority? I thought it just to be clear, we could separate them. Because I mean, we file Form 1s, and I don't have purchasing authority at 35, not even $35. So I think just separating it just makes it a little clearer. Form 1, if you don't have that purchasing authority, if you're filing a Form 1, you're still going to fall under this category. The bigger issue, however, was that we wanted to ensure that we didn't capture administrative staff that might be involved in a procurement of some sort. I think the example I've always used is, what if the administrative assistant just makes copies of the bids and distributes them to the selection committee? If they've been involved, the way the statute's written, you could argue that they did have some involvement, even though it wasn't really a decision-making type of involvement. So this just makes this crystal clear that those people would be outside the definition. Second, on the next page, when we first adopted this, the Inspector General's office didn't exist. So we leave the auditor in. We had the city inspector general just, I guess, a belt and suspenders approach. And then this language, it says members appointed by the city commission to serve on any advisory, quasi-judicial, or any of the board. I think one of us is appointed by the city commission. The vast majority of this board is not. So the way the definition is now, we are outside of that definition. I know that issue's been raised, some saying, is that a loophole? This essentially says, okay, we're going to be bound to the same rules that every other advisory and quasi judicial board is. So it just removes that language where city commission has to appoint them. It just says any city board that's serving. So, and that is all for that ordinance.
Are there any questions on 9B?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Okay.
It is.
Second. All right, Mr. Kelly makes a motion and Ms. Coleman seconds. All in favor of accepting the changes to 9B as written in our booklet here? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, let's move to 9C, which is employees doing business with the city. That's after your next page.
This is, and I think we do, yep, we have the advisory opinion included. This is that wild opinion by with the LLC that was going to try to get money from the city. And we said you'd be violating the state code, but you technically would not be violating our code. So we essentially take language from 112.313. There's a number of subsections. Subsection 3 is the doing business with one's agency prohibition. Subsection 7 is the conflicting employment or contractual relationship subsection. And then there's a subsection 12 that creates exceptions back to those two subsections only. It's kind of a weird way that they lay out. So, but then I took them out of order and I took subsection 7 and I made that our subsection A. And this deals with employees that have a contractual relationship with a business entity that does business with the city. It says they will not have a relationship with private interest that works with the city. And then also when acting in their official capacity, they can't initiate a transaction with an entity in which they have a contractual relationship with. So it takes an approach from them working with the private business. And then if they're using their position to work out, you also have a misuse of public position issue that could probably be raised. But this tracks the state statute to make sure we're getting both. There are some exceptions. It doesn't prohibit those that engage in a particular profession. So if you're a CPA or a lawyer, you could still practice in those areas. We have a provision that shall not solicit any employment. That's not in the state law. That's something we did back in 2019. Thought I'd just put it back in there since we did it once before. And then one that's also, I don't think it's in the state statute, but we put it in, I think last time, where if somebody receives an offer of employment or contractual relationship, they would have to disclose to the city attorney's office as well as the ethics board. Kind of similar to another prohibition of the offers of outside employment. So again, another belt suspenders approach, just to kind of ensure that, we know exactly what's going on and everything is done above board. Subsection B then takes us back to 112.313, subsection 3. And this is, hold on a second. Yes, so that goes back to subsection 3. There's a note of paragraphs there. When someone's acting in their capacity as an official, and these two subsections in the state statute are very similar. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. So the language almost repeats itself, but if they're a city employee acting in their official capacity as a procurement employee, they can't do business with an entity that would benefit them financially or a family member. And then the flip side, they can't be involved with a business where they receive some financial benefit or a family member receives some financial benefit that they know is going to do business for the city. So that is how we relate to that subsection 3 in the state statute. We then pick up in subsections C and D, and there's no E, just C and D. And those are the exceptions that are found in subsection 12 of the state statute. There's this issue where if you are appointed to a board, one dealing with boards, whoever appoints you, you could essentially get a waiver from, which could be a little complicated for us, but I think it is primarily for boards appointed by the city commission. The ones you commonly see, the sole source is one that's pretty common. You're able to do business with your agency at the state level, here with the city, if you're the only one that in the region that offers that particular service and they have nowhere else to go. If it's a rotation system where you're just a cog in the wheel and eventually it's going to get around to you, but then it's going to get to everybody else equally, you can participate that way. And if you have an interest in a business that submits a sealed competitive bid, as long as you're not involved in the evaluation process, you could be involved in that. They also have an exception in state law regarding legal advertising. An emergency purchase, there's an exception like you see in a lot of procurement news where if you got to buy something because there's an emergency, you got to do it. The sole source is subsection 5. 6 is, yeah, and then if the total number of transactions are less than $5,000 or $500 a year, then you wouldn't apply. If you're a stockholder in a bank, a lot of people might have, I don't know who the city uses as their bank, but if they have Bank of America and you happen to have Bank of America stock in your mutual fund, that wouldn't be a problem. And the purchasing in your private capacity at terms that are available to similarly situated members of the general public. We had an advisory opinion a year or so ago where city employees were getting discounts on shoes from, I can't remember the name of the shoe box. But it was case law that came out from the State Commission on Ethics that said because it was available to similarly situated individuals, it wasn't prohibition under the gift ordinance, and we would essentially take that same concept and apply it here for doing business with. And then just if you're doing business with somebody who is just subject to the regulations of the city, which is really going to be a lot of people, that wouldn't bar you from doing business with somebody that just their only relationship with the city is that the city regulates them. So that's essentially what that is. And then the renumbering gets a little confusing. The ethics, so there are 2 divisions within Section 2, Article 1, Divisions 3 and 4 of the Code of Ordinances. And Division 3 is full. So by adding a new section, we're getting out of 3 and moving everything into 4. So I provide that, I kind of explain that the subsequent sections are all going to be renumbered. Go to the top of page, but I guess it's page 11. You see a section, what used to be 2-20 is now going to become 2-21. 2-21 used to be in section 4, so that now is going to move, Division 4 is now going to be moving to Division 3. And then we just continue with renumbering the sections under Division 4, which is entitled Ethics Board. So that is that ordinance.
Any questions on this ordinance?
Yes. Are you anticipating the same definition of material interest as the state statute? Page 8.
Yeah, no, that's, we could bring this back and propose a definition to 2-4 that has that definition.
So do we have in the current ordinance, is there a reference to material?
No. We do not define.
So I would opt for consistency if there is. I wasn't sure if there was.
Let me take a look.
That is line 48, page 8. I think it's $5,000. 2.5%.
5%. Material interest means direct or indirect ownership of more than 5% of the total assets or capital stock of any business entity. For the purposes of this act, indirect ownership does not include ownership by a spouse or minor child. So we could bring this back, move this 2-16 down, republish 2-4 and just add a paragraph under 2-4 that includes that definition.
Is that the will of the board?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions on this one? Okay. Next, we have ethics complaints concerning the staff and board. We previously discussed alternatives for handling complaints against the board and staff. And so we asked the staff to present the pros and cons of the alternatives to help us decide on the best solution. So, Ms. Reed again.
Sorry. So we talked about, so especially now that we are proposing a change in the covered individual definition, what happens if somebody files a complaint against somebody at this table? So we presented two options. One is we handle it primarily in-house. Two, we attempt to send it to the state. So that's option one and option two. I tried to provide some pros and cons of each. I think and my recommendation is to keep it in-house by bringing in an outside investigator and an outside attorney to serve as an advocate, which we provide for in our bylaws. And that way it creates, it allows it to be somewhat independent and impartial. So I think it maintains local control, provides the transparency and accountability by hiring outside people. I think that shows that we're trying to be as impartial as we can. Efficiency, we probably have a lot less on our plate than the Florida Commission on Ethics, so we could probably get complaints done a little quicker here, and then tailored expertise. There may be some issues that are somewhat unique to Tallahassee that maybe the commission wouldn't be as well equipped to handle. Disadvantages, perceived bias, even though we have the outside folks, people might say, oh, they're really going to crack down on one of their own. Conflicts of interest, if people have close relationships on this board, that could raise questions. Resource intensive, it does require us to go out and pay the investigator and the attorney. And then potential for inconsistency is an issue, but I think we could always establish additional procedures to try to button that up. Option two is we send it to the state. Obviously, the best advantage is it's completely out of our hands, so it's very easy to say this is an impartial decision that's being made. Consistency, we would hope that they were just going to treat it like any other complaint, and it wouldn't be unique to them like it would be to this board because it's one of our own. So they would just treat it like they would every other complaint. Expertise, they obviously have people there that have been there for decades that specialize in this type of law. And then it would reduce our burden. It would be one more issue that would be off our plate. Disadvantages, we lose control. It could go there. I know that Senate Bill 7014 did provide some timelines, so complaints wouldn't just die on the vine at the commission, but it still could be a year or so. We may want to move a little quicker. So that's the longer timelines, loss of local control. Public perception, it's kind of the flip side of what we said earlier. People might say, oh, they can't police their own. What are they? Legal and contractual complexities. We don't know if the Commission on Ethics would do this. We wanted to see what the will of the board was before we approached them, but they might say this is something that we are not able to do. But But we wanted to come to you first and see if that was the direction you want to go in before we initiated that conversation. So again, my recommendation would be to keep it in-house using an outside investigator and attorney that would provide the legal opinion as to probable cause and would present the issue to the probable cause panel, which would still be this board. And I will say there is some precedent to this. Back in 2018, before I was the board attorney, I was hired to be an advocate. And I came in and I did exactly that. There were 2 complaints made, and I received the facts and I wrote legal opinions on both to determine whether there was probable cause or not. And then I presented it to the ethics board in a closed session. So it would essentially just repeat that process using an outside attorney. Last time was me.
That is consistent from what we've heard from other programs like ours throughout the state. So I concur with that.
That was my first question. What are other ethics boards doing? And they usually handle it themselves. My biggest concern with the other option is the time. I mean, we have no control over how long something like that could take. And my vote is is towards the first option. I think the first option would be and I would be also concerned with that negative if we passed it on as, why are we here as an ethics board to make determinations if we can't even make them on our own board? That's where I am.
I myself am leaning towards option 1 as well, but does anyone have a strong feeling on option 2 that they'd like to talk amongst us? And okay, well then, like, make a motion,
Do you need a motion to move forward,
or do we just pick?
I think you could probably just do a consensus. Probably if you could direct me to come back with some procedures, some new administrative procedures on, making sure we got, everything handled correctly and we're consistent. I can bring that to the next meeting.
So then let's do that. We, as a board, our consensus is option 1. And then let's develop some procedures related to option 1. All right. And next we have our review of the 3-year strategic plan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Near the end of each fiscal year, the board reviews actions taken in during the current year, see how they aligned it with the strategic plan. The board uses this summary to update the plan for the next fiscal years and 3 years out. I provided you with a review of the board's activities. You actually see them in red in the strategic plan, and you also see them in the annual report. But to summarize a little bit, the board investigated 9 allegations concerning 4 elected officials and the police chief that, if true, would have been a violation of the ethics code. After a thorough investigation, the board unanimously ruled that there was no probable cause and dismissed each case. The ethics officer, and these are all in relation to activities that the board wanted to see. The ethics officer attended an international conference and ethics seminars throughout the year, communicated with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and he and the board attorney have collaborated with the other ethics officers in Florida to enhance job skills and network. As an outreach to the board created a presence on Facebook and YouTube, updated the ethics guide, which you'll see next month, and effectively utilized the board's website. Using game theory, the ethics office created cutting-edge online training for the City of Tallahassee employees. In collaboration with the city, the course was created and delivered at substantial cost savings. The ethics office hosted a training session for the city commissioners and the mayor and their aides in compliance with the ethics code and Florida statutes. The deputy executive director and general counsel for the Board Commission of Ethics was the guest instructor. At the request of the director of the Tallahassee Future Leaders Academy, the ethics office conducted a training session for 100 youth attending their summer program. According to the director, this training session has become one of the program's highlights. The ethics office participated in 5 new employee orientation sessions, briefing employees on the city ethical standards, and conducted 15 training sessions for new employees. Based on surveys results, which we looked at, we the ratings were consistently a 5 out of 5. There were 1 or 2 threes, but most of them were 5 out of 5. With comments that let you know that learning took place. According to the city's training staff, the style of instruction is used as a model for facilitated learning, and I've heard that more than once. The city commission approved 2 proposed charter amendments in response to the board's recommendations. Proposed changes will appear on the November 24th election ballot. In response to a request for legal opinion, the board drafted recommendations to the city commission for the changes to the city ordinance that will prevent city employees from conducting business with the city, and that's what you just talked about. In fairness to elected city officials and city employees, the board drafted recommendations to the city commission for changes to the city ordinance regarding solicitation, acceptance of gifts, and definition of covered individuals. The board implemented a media campaign to increase awareness of campaign contribution refund program and assess public interest. The board will later evaluate the outcome to determine future strategies. So those were some things that staff accomplished, and the board accomplished through the staff. Some of these will continue as part of review, depending on what you do in September. Get ahead of it. The final report for the strategic plan will be in October. And I will also bring back at that time a proposed revised strategic plan. Among those, we are proposing removing one of the priorities and merging 2. The ones that deal with, let's see, what was it? Engaging on social media, public awareness and training, putting those together is one priority because they're very much related. And then we won't have to repeat those. I'm redefining the implementation of the campaign contribution program, the way it's written right now. It talks about creating a certain type of environment and is rewritten to focus specifically on what the campaign contribution program is supposed to do. Priority 1, encourage the office staff to attend the course that enhances job skills. Right now it says me, but I'm saying the whole staff rather than just me. And John has been doing that, and Tasker's been doing that as well. So we will report it. Update the ethics guide and distribute it to all city officials and employees, and we've already started that process. And right now it says every 5 years, and I'm saying every 3 years. Refresh them on and encourage them to report violations. Add a list of concerns to be presented to the city commission as action items with recommendations, and those are the things you're talking about now. We would add them to the strategic plan to ensure that we follow up.
One thought on that priority number 3, just because it doesn't always fly so well to strengthen the board's role, maybe with the city commission, because they don't like to think of us as being stronger. Maybe present action items to the city commission to further outline the board's role or further define or just define or something like that. But as much as ultimately we know that it means to strengthen it, but I don't know how they would like that word, seeing it in our strategic priorities. But I like your behind it.
Sure. And then the last thing I have to remove a goal by percentage for the campaign contribution refund program, because it's clear that that's not realistic. And so I've been voted to remove that. So those are proposed changes, not asking you to vote on it now. We'll actually bring this and the annual report back in October after everything's done and we have final numbers and whatnot. But what I did want to do, and you just did it, was if you had any other input that you want, when I bring it back, you can tell me now.
I just was wondering if Mr. Commissar's high school graduation picture
That's next. That's on the next one.
He's just a young looking yeoman. Yes, and we haven't added my picture attached yet. I just posted it today, so.
You posed?
Smile this time?
I didn't smile this time, and you're referring to the article that was in the paper where I used no, because I don't take pictures of myself.
Mugshot.
Yeah, look like you're being hostage.
Yeah.
Reminded me of my dad when he was mad at me.
That's all I had, so we are correcting that.
All right, so moving on to the draft of the 2024 annual report. The staff is
Okay.
presenting a draft of the annual report to allow the board members to give input in the final draft, which will be presented for adoption at the next.
Right, and that same thing, the ethics course requires the board present an annual report to the city commission. We'll look to do that probably in November. Staff is presenting a draft for the board to provide feedback. We'll submit a final draft in October for your adoption. Where you see blank on the word from the chair and the word from me, we are drafting something. I'm going to reflect on the past year, and the chair is going to speak more towards the future and where we are, and basically say we're not deterred by by 7014 or anything else. We still feel comfortable about doing our job with confidence. I just asked her to speak from our heart on that. So she's going to write that, and I'm going to write it on reflections on the past year. So you'll see that. You see the pictures. John still has his own page. He's deserving. Plus, we have anything else to put on the page. and this is what you see there.
There's a section in here about the advisory opinions, and then there's the one about community-sponsored activity and a scavenger hunt, and then one about publicity. If we end up changing those rules or anything, should we have something that says that was our opinion here, but you now can do public publicity because I just, are either of these?
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like if we end up modifying that rule, is this little quick reference guide gonna say we said you can't do that, but then we changed the rule to say you can? Just if we end up changing it, maybe.
Probably we can make a note to put something, because this is going to be or it is on the website. So when the time comes, Tasker will make a note and remind us to,
Put an asterisk on it or something.
yeah, put something on the website that said that this is what we've done to address this issue. Thank you, Tasker.
All right, any other questions about the annual report at this moment?
It's very nice.
It's better every year.
Thank you. The last 2 years have been pretty much Tasker.
Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? Okay. All right, so the directives I have are coming back with referrals versus direct complaints. The 9A, the de minimis value, we're all leaning towards B. And then add that with a public appearance carve out, or just the public appearance carve out first by itself. And procedure, 9C is add material interest definition. And then procedures relating towards option 1 with ethics members. And I think that was it. Any other directives or anything else for the staff?
I just wanted to thank John for his hard work and director. We had a longer than usual agenda here today. And you guys did a good job of steering us through it. And
That's why I get the full page.
Fine, okay.
And she sits in our weekly meeting, so she knows now.
All right, and any other concerns, questions? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 5:17.
Thank you.